They know we're here. We have to go now.
You know, there are moments in life that divide your timeline into before and after. Moments where the world tilts just enough to let the darkness slide in. And for Ethan Turner, that moment wasn't when his wife died, though God knows that broke him. It was the moment a key card clicked in a lock on the 4th floor of the Marlowe Hotel in Portland. Ethan was a guy who lived in the realm of logic, a cybersecurity architect who built digital fortresses for Fortune 500 companies, a man who believed that if you couldn't code it, track it, or touch it, it wasn't real. But standing there in the hallway, with the smell of old dust and lemon polish thick in the air, Logic decided to take a coffee break. He pushed open the heavy oak door to room 407, expecting the stale silence of an empty hotel room, maybe the hum of a mini fridge, but instead, he walked into a whisper, a woman's voice, soft and intimate, drifting from the corner of the room where the shadows clung to the curtains like spiderwebs. "Ethan," it said, and it wasn't a question, it was a greeting, breathless and terrifyingly familiar. He froze, his hands still on the door handle, his knuckles turning white, because there is no reason, absolutely no scientific reason, for a voice in an empty room in a city 300 miles from home to know his name. He checked the hallway. Empty. He checked the closet. Empty. He checked the bathroom, pristine and dry. But the air in that room felt heavy, charged with a static that made the hair on his arms stand up. And right then, he should have turned around. He should have marched down to the lobby and demanded a refund. But Ethan didn't leave. Because Ethan was a man running from a ghost he couldn't see. And maybe, just maybe, he thought he finally found one he could see. 3 years ago, Ethan's life was a postcard. He had the house in Seattle, the career, the 7-year-old daughter named Mia who had her mother's laugh, and he had Lily, his wife, his anchor, until a rainy Tuesday and a truck running a red light turned his postcard into a eulogy. Since then, he'd been operating on autopilot, a single dad trying to be mother and father, trying to fill a void that was black hole-sized with work and routines. And this trip to Portland was supposed to be just another distraction, a high-stakes encryption deal with a financial firm that would secure Mia's college fund 10 times over. But the Marlowe Hotel wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a relic, a Gothic Victorian beast of a building that looked like it frowned at the modern skyscrapers surrounding it, dark brick, wrought iron, and a lobby that felt less like a welcome center and more like a mausoleum for the Gilded Age. When he'd checked in earlier that afternoon, the vibe was already off. The front desk clerk, a woman named Mrs. Pearson with eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in a decade, had actually flinched when she saw his room assignment. "Room 407, she'd whispered, her hand trembling as she passed him the key, looking at him with this profound, silent pity that made his skin crawl. Before he could ask her what her problem was, a man had materialized from the back office, smooth as oil, wearing a suit that cost more than Ethan's car, introducing himself as Vincent Hale, the general manager. Vincent was all charm and teeth, silver hair slicked back, a predator's smile plastered on a politician's face, telling Ethan that room 407 was their presidential suite, reserved for VIPs, reserved specially for him because his company was such a valued partner. But standing in that room now, with the echo of his name still hanging in the air, Ethan didn't feel like a VIP. He felt like bait. He spent that first night sitting up in bed with the lights on, laptop open, pretending to work while listening to the house settle. And it wasn't just the settling of old wood. It was footsteps, pacing back and forth on the carpet at the foot of his bed, soft, rhythmic, like someone waiting for a bus that never came. At 3 a.m., exhausted and feeling like he was losing his grip on reality, he went to the bathroom to splash cold water on his face. And that's when he saw it on the mirror, which had been cleaned 10 minutes ago, was a message written in the condensation of a shower he hadn't taken. "Don't trust them." 3 words, jagged and weeping water droplets down the glass. Ethan stared at it, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. And the engineer in him tried to find a rational explanation. A draft, a thermal anomaly, a prank by the housekeeping staff, but the father in him, the man who had learned that the world can take everything you love in a heartbeat, felt a cold knot of dread tighten in his stomach. The next morning, he went down to the lobby, determined to check out, to go to a Marriott, to go anywhere that didn't leave messages on his mirror. But as he approached the desk, he saw Mrs. Pearson again, and she looked terrified. She locked eyes with him, gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head, and then loudly, overly loudly, asked if he needed extra towels. While her eyes darted toward Vincent's office, Ethan caught the signal. He played along, asking for towels, and as she handed them to him, she slipped a folded piece of paper into his palm, her fingers icy cold. He didn't look at it until he was in the elevator, and when he unfolded the scrap, it was a receipt, an old one, with a note scrawled on the back in shaky handwriting. Check the loose board under the radiator. Now, Ethan wasn't an idiot. He knew he was walking into a bad movie plot, but he went back to 407, locked the door, slid the heavy bolt home, and went straight to the window. The radiator was a cast iron beast, painted 100 times over, and sure enough, the floorboard beneath it was loose. Prying it up with the edge of his room key, he found a small, dusty hollow, and inside, wrapped in a plastic grocery bag that had yellowed with age, was a leather-bound journal. He sat on the floor, back against the wall, and opened it, and suddenly, he wasn't alone in the room anymore. He was with Clara Vance. Clara Vance, according to the neat, looping handwriting, was a software engineer, 28 years old, who had checked into the Marlowe Hotel 12 years ago for a conference. She wrote about the city, about the rain, about missing her cat, mundane things that made her feel heartbreakingly real. But as the pages turned, the tone shifted, the handwriting became jagged. Rushed. Day 3. I think someone was in my room. My laptop was moved. My files were accessed. Day 4. I found a camera in the vent. They're watching me. I don't know what they want, but I saw the manager, the silver-haired one, talking to men in the basement. They have servers down there, massive ones. Day 5. I can't leave. They blocked my key card. The phone doesn't work. I'm going to try the fire escape tonight, if anyone finds this. My name is Clara Vance, and I think they're going to kill me. The journal ended there. Ethan sat in the silence, the weight of the book heavy in his hands, realizing that the voice he heard, the presence he felt, wasn't a haunting, it was a plea. A 12-year-old distress signal from a woman who had been erased. He pulled out his phone and searched for Clara Vance. And there it was, a cold case file from a decade ago. Woman vanishes during business trip. Police suspected a runaway. Case closed due to lack of evidence. But Ethan held the evidence in his hands. He knew he had to leave. He had to take this to the police. But just as he stood up, his laptop, which he had left in sleep mode on the desk, woke up. The screen flared to life, casting a blue glow over the room, and a video window opened, playing a live feed. It was a feed of his own living room in Seattle. Ethan stopped breathing, staring at the screen where he could see Mrs. Patterson, the nanny, sitting on his couch folding laundry, and Mia, his sweet, innocent Mia, playing on the floor with her dolls, completely unaware that 300 miles away, her father was watching her through the lens of a camera that shouldn't exist. Then, text appeared across the video feed, typing itself out letter by letter. We have the source code. Mur, Turner. Now we want the key. Stay in the room. Or the nanny goes away. Rage, hot and blinding, exploded in Ethan's chest, completely overriding the fear. Because you can threaten a man. You can haunt him. You can even kill him. But you do not touch his child. He realized then that this wasn't just about Clara. It wasn't just a creepy hotel. This was a corporate espionage ring, sophisticated, brutal, and using the hotel as a honeypot to trap executives, steal their data, and blackmail them into silence or bury them in the basement. If they refused, Vincent Hale wasn't a hotelier. He was a data broker, a shark feeding on the secrets of his guests. And he had made the mistake of trying to eat a man who built shark cages for a living. Ethan needed help, and he couldn't call the cops, not yet, not with them watching Mia. So he opened a terminal on his laptop, bypassed the hotel's Wi-Fi, which was undoubtedly compromised, and tethered to his phone's encrypted connection. He typed out a message to the only person he trusted with his life, Marcus, his old college roommate who was now an investigative journalist, with contacts in the FBI Cyber Division, Marlowe Hotel, PDX, corporate espionage ring, holding me hostage, threatening Mia, need extraction and backup. Code red. He hit send and prayed, watching the little progress bar creep across the screen, praying Marcus was awake, praying the signal would get out before Vincent's tech goons intercepted it. Just as the message sent notification popped up, the hotel room phone rang. It was a shrill, old-fashioned mechanical ring that sounded like a scream in the quiet room. Ethan picked it up, not saying a word. Mr. Turner, Vincent's voice was smooth, like velvet wrapped around a razor blade. I hope you're finding the accommodations. Illuminating, I see you've found Clara's little diary. Sloppy of us to miss that, really, but no matter. Bring the encryption key for your software down to the basement. Take the service elevator. Come alone. And perhaps we can keep your daughter's childhood uncomplicated. If you touch her, Ethan said, his voice dropping to a register he didn't know he possessed. I will burn this building down with you inside it. Dramatic, Vincent chuckled. I like that, for 107 always did have a flair for the dramatic. 5 minutes, Ethan, or we make a call to Seattle. The line went dead. Ethan looked at the journal, looked at the screen where Mia was playing, and he made a choice. He wasn't going down there as a victim. He wasn't going down there to negotiate. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small, unassuming USB drive. It looked like a generic thumb drive, but it was a poison pill, a piece of code he'd written years ago for a government contract, designed to infect a server, encrypt every file, and then delete the encryption key, effectively bricking the entire system. It was the nuclear option. He tucked the drive into his pocket, grabbed Clara's journal, and walked out of room for 107, and as he closed the door, he felt a cold breeze brush past his cheek like a hand guiding him, and heard that whisper one last time, that make them pay. I will, he whispered back to the empty hallway. He took the service elevator, the metal cage rattling as it descended into the bowels of the hotel, past the lobby, past the laundry, down into the sub-basement where the air smelled of ozone and damp earth. The doors opened, and he stepped out into a space that shouldn't exist in a Victorian hotel. It was a high-tech command center, walls lined with server racks humming with power, monitors displaying feeds from every room in the hotel, stealing secrets, recording affairs, capturing passwords, and in the center of the room, sitting behind a massive glass desk, was Vincent Hale, flanked by two security guards who looked like they were carved out of granite. Welcome to the nerve center, Vincent said, gesturing around with a glass of scotch in his hand. Impressive, isn't it? The things people will say and do when they think they're private. Where is she? Ethan asked, stepping forward, his hands visible, his posture loose, ready. Mia? Oh, she's fine. For now, Vincent smiled, tapping a keyboard, bringing up the feed of Ethan's living room on the main screen. Such a sweet girl, looks just like her mother. Tragedy about your wife. By the way, I'd hate for Mia to be an orphan. I meant Clara, Ethan said, throwing the journal onto the desk. Where is she? Vincent's smile faltered for a second, his eyes flicking to the journal. Ah, Miss Vance, she was. Stubborn like you. She didn't want to share. She thought she could outsmart us. He stood up, walking around the desk. She's here, actually. Part of the foundation, quite literally, behind that wall over there. He pointed to a section of fresh brick in the corner. We keep our secrets close. Ethan felt a wave of nausea, but he pushed it down, converting it into fuel. You want the key? Ethan asked, reaching into his pocket. Here. He held up the poison drive. Wise choice. Vincent extended his hand. Ethan tossed it to him, and Vincent caught it, looking triumphant, looking like a man who had won. He handed it to one of his tech guys. Upload it, verify the source code. The tech guy plugged it into the main terminal. Ethan watched, counting down in his head. 3, 2, 1. The screens on the wall flickered. The hum of the servers pitched up, a whining sound that grew louder and louder until it was painful. Sir? The tech guy said, panic rising in his voice. Sir, something is wrong. It's rewriting the BIOS. It's locking us out. What did you do? Vincent roared, spinning on Ethan, his face twisting into a mask of rage. "I gave you exactly what you deserved," Ethan said calmly. "I just bricked your entire operation. Every file, every blackmail video, every stolen password. Gone, forever." Vincent pulled a gun from his waistband, leveling it at Ethan's chest. "You think this is a game? You think you can destroy 15 years of work and walk away? I think." Vincent laughed, a dry, barking sound that echoed off the concrete walls of the server room. "You think you're clever, Mr. Turner? You think flashing some fancy code is going to save you? I have men in Seattle right now. One phone call, and your little girl becomes a statistic." He thumbed the hammer of the pistol back. The metallic click loud in the sudden silence of the crashing servers. "Fix it. Undo the code." Now, Ethan stood his ground, though his knees felt like water. He knew the poison pill couldn't be undone, that was the point, but he needed to buy time. He needed a miracle. Or a ghost. "I can't," Ethan said, raising his hands slowly. "That's the beauty of it, Vincent. It's a one-way trip. Even I can't decrypt it. You've lost. The FBI is already tracking the data spike. They know where you are. Then you have no value," Vincent sneered, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Goodbye, Mr. Turner." But before he could fire, the lights in the basement surged, glowing with a blinding intensity before shattering, popping one by one in a shower of sparks. The room plunged into darkness, lit only by the dying red emergency LEDs of the server racks. And then the sound began. It wasn't a whisper this time. It was a scream, a high-pitched, electronic feedback loop screeching through the speakers of the surveillance system, amplified to a deafening volume. It sounded like a woman screaming in digital agony. Vincent flinched, covering his ears, the gun wavering. "What is that? Turn it off," he screamed at his tech guy, but the tech was already scrambling away from the console, terrified. In the strobing red light, the monitors that lined the wall, the ones that had been blacked out by Ethan's virus, suddenly flared back to life. But they weren't showing hotel rooms anymore. Every single screen showed the same image, a grainy, black and white frame of Clara Vance, staring directly into the camera, her eyes wide, her mouth open in a silent accusation. It was the last frame of video she had recorded before she died, loop playing across 50 monitors. "No," Vincent whispered, backing up, his composure cracking. "That's impossible. We deleted that. We wiped the drives." "You can't delete the truth," Ethan yelled over the screeching audio. "She's still here, Vincent. She's been waiting for you." The air in the room dropped 20 degrees in a second. You could see your breath. The heavy steel door to the server room slammed shut with a boom that shook the floor, locking them all in. Vincent's guards, big men who probably feared nothing physical, were looking around with wide, panicked eyes. One of them pointed a shaking finger at the corner of the room, the section of fresh brick Vincent had pointed out earlier. "The wall," the guard stammered. "Look at the wall." Mortar was crumbling. Dust was puffing out from the bricks as if something behind them was pushing, pounding, demanding to be let out. Thump, thump, thump. "It's a trick," Vincent screamed, firing his gun wildly into the monitors, shattering glass. But the image of Clara remained on the broken shards, flickering, watching. "It's just a hack. Kill him." But his men didn't move. They were paralyzed by a fear that went beyond payroll. Taking advantage of the chaos, Ethan lunged. He didn't go for Vincent. He went for the fire alarm on the wall. He smashed the glass with his elbow and yanked the lever. The building's alarm blared, a physical pulsing sound that layered over the digital scream. Sprinklers erupted from the ceiling, dousing the room in cold, black water, shorting out the remaining servers in sparks and smoke. "You ruined everything," Vincent howled, leveling the gun at Ethan through the rain and smoke. But just as he pulled the trigger, the basement door, the one that had slammed shut, was blown off its hinges. "FBI, drop the weapon. Get on the ground." A tactical team swarmed the room, lasers cutting through the mist, armored bodies moving with precision. Marcus was right behind them, wearing a press vest, looking terrified and exhilarating all at once. "Ethan," Marcus yelled, spotting his friend. Vincent spun around, trying to aim at the agents, but he didn't stand a chance. 3 tasers hit him simultaneously. He convulsed and dropped into the inch-deep water covering the floor. Twitching as the electricity surged through him, Ethan slumped against the wall, sliding down until he hit the wet concrete, the adrenaline crash hitting him like a physical blow. He watched as they cuffed Vincent, watched as the tech guy and the guards surrendered without a fight, watched as the paramedics rushed in. Marcus ran over, hauling Ethan to his feet. "You crazy son of a. I thought you were dead. We got your message, but the signal cut out." "I'm okay," Ethan gasped, wiping water and soot from his face. "Is Mia?" "She's safe," Marcus promised, gripping Ethan's shoulder. "Seattle PD picked up the guy watching your house 10 minutes ago. He gave up Vincent immediately. Mrs. Patterson and Mia are with a protection detail. She's safe, Ethan. You did it." Ethan looked across the room, past the chaos of the arrest, to the corner with the brick wall. The thumping had stopped. The monitors were dark. The unnatural cold was fading. He walked over to the wall, ignoring the FBI agents yelling at him to stay back. He placed his hand on the damp bricks. "Thank you," he whispered. He didn't know if it was the wiring shorting out, or the stress, or something else entirely, but for a fleeting second, the air around him smelled like lavender, the same smell from room 407. And then it was gone. The aftermath was a media frenzy. Marcus broke the story of the century, the Hotel of Horrors. The discovery of Clara Vance's remains behind the basement wall made national news, bringing closure to a family that had spent a decade wondering. The encryption key Ethan used destroyed Vincent's leverage over dozens of politicians and CEOs, liberating them from years of blackmail. Vincent Hale was indicted on charges ranging from racketeering to first-degree murder. He would never see the outside of a cell again. But for Ethan, the only victory that mattered was the one waiting for him at the airport gate in Seattle. When he walked off the jet bridge, tired, bruised, his arm in a sling from the takedown, he saw her. Mia broke away from the police escort and ran to him, her little sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. "Daddy!" she screamed, launching herself at him. Ethan caught her with his good arm, dropping to his knees, burying his face in her hair. He held her so tight he was afraid he might break her, shaking with the sobs he had held back for days. "I'm here, baby," he whispered over and over. "I'm here. I'm never leaving you again." He took a month off work. They went to Disneyland. They ate ice cream for dinner. He spent every minute soaking in the reality of her, the solid, living weight of his daughter. He realized that for 3 years, he had been a ghost in his own life, haunting his house but not really living in it, paralyzed by the grief of losing his wife. But Clara had taught him that you can't save the dead, but you have to fight like hell for the living. 6 months later, Ethan returned to Portland, not for work, but for the memorial service. The city had demolished the Marlowe Hotel. Nobody wanted to buy a building with that much blood in the mortar. They were turning the lot into a park. Ethan stood at the edge of the construction site, holding a single white rose. Marcus stood beside him, silent. "You think she's still there?" Marcus asked quietly. "No," Ethan said, looking at the open sky where room 407 used to be. "I think she finally checked out." He tossed the rose onto the turned earth. He thought about the message on the mirror, "Don't trust them." It was a warning, yes, but it was also a gift. It was a stranger reaching out across the void to save a father she never knew, just so a little girl in Seattle wouldn't have to grow up alone. Ethan pulled out his phone. His background image was a selfie of him and Mia, grinning with Mickey Mouse ears. "Come on," Ethan said, turning his back on the ruins of the Marlowe. "I have a date with my daughter. We're building a Lego castle tonight, and I promised I wouldn't be late." As they walked away, the wind picked up, swirling the dust of the old hotel into small devils that danced across the empty lot. And if you listened closely, underneath the noise of the city traffic and the distant construction, you might have heard the sound of a door clicking shut, locking away the darkness for good. So, here's the thing I want you to take away from this. We walk through life thinking we're alone, thinking our battles are invisible. But sometimes the universe is watching. Sometimes the gut feeling you get, the voice in the back of your head saying turn left or don't open that door, isn't just paranoia. Maybe it's help. And maybe, just maybe, the ones we've lost aren't as far away as we think. They're just in the next room, waiting for us to be ready to live again. I want to know, have you ever had a warning, a sign from someone who passed, or just a feeling that saved your life? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And remember, trust your gut. It might just be the only thing standing between you and room 407. Stay safe out there, and hug your loved ones tight. Peace.